At 6 feet 1 inch and 218 pounds, Cam Neely wasn't the biggest power forward in NHL history. But what made him special wasn't just his size, it was how he used it. They called him Bam Bam Cam because he could score 50 goals in a season and still drop the gloves with anyone who dared to challenge him. In just 726 games, he scored 395 goals and delivered countless bone-crushing hits that made even the toughest players think twice before crossing his path. His style wasn't just about scoring or fighting, it redefined what a power forward could be. Before Neely, power forwards were mostly big guys who crashed into opponents. After him, every team wanted their own version of Cam Neely, someone who could beat you with their skills and their fists. Even though injuries cut his career short at just 31, he still pulled off a feat few players in history have managed, scoring 50 goals in just 44 games, a mark that still stands as one of the most electrifying goal-scoring runs in NHL history. Before we get into Cam Neely's incredible story, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. This channel is all about bringing you the untold stories of sport's biggest legends. Today's story follows Cam Neely's journey from a small-town kid in Comox, British Columbia, to becoming one of the most feared power forwards in NHL history. We'll see how a blockbuster trade by the Vancouver Canucks turned into one of the biggest blunders in hockey history, and how Neely dominated the league with his rare mix of skill and brute force. But just as he reached the peak of his career, a brutal hit from Ulf Samuelsson in the 1991 playoffs changed everything. This tale of toughness begins in 1983, when a 17-year-old Neely was bulldozing opponents in the Western Hockey League, catching the eyes of NHL scouts who saw something special in a kid who could bury goals and drop the gloves with equal skill. The Boston Bruins of the mid-1880s were stuck in a strange spot. They had the legendary Ray Bourque leading their defense, but lacked the offensive firepower to be true contenders. Their scoring struggles were evident in the 1985-86 season, where only 2 players managed more than 30 goals, leaving the team far from championship form. The Bruins were still living off their old reputation from the Bobby Orr era, but fans were growing frustrated with defensive hockey that led to early playoff exits. Then, on June 6, 1986, the Bruins pulled off what would become one of the most lopsided trades in NHL history. They sent Barry Peterson to the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for a young Cam Neely and a first-round draft pick. At the time, the Canucks thought they were getting the better deal. Peterson had once racked up 116 points in a season, but in reality, they were giving away a future superstar they had drafted 9th overall just 3 years earlier. The Canucks had pushed Neely into the NHL at just 18, using him primarily in a depth role rather than giving him a real chance to develop. They saw him as a physical player who could fight and hit, but they completely overlooked the natural goal scorer waiting to break out. The Bruins, desperate for both scoring and toughness, saw exactly what Vancouver couldn't, a rare combination of skills that would change their franchise forever. From his first game in a Bruins jersey, Neely showed Boston fans exactly what they'd been missing. In his first season with Boston, he jumped from his previous best of 21 goals with Vancouver to 36 goals, while piling up 143 penalty minutes. Other teams quickly realized that pushing around the Bruins now came with a painful price. Neely would either score on you or make you regret dropping the gloves with him. His defining moment came in the 1988 playoffs against Montreal. The Canadiens had dominated the Bruins for decades, but Neely helped change that narrative by delivering 2 massive goals in Game 5, leading Boston to its first playoff series win over Montreal in 45 years. The following season, he kept climbing, hitting 37 goals and cementing himself as the most beloved Bruin after Ray Bourque. But what truly made Neely special wasn't just his ability to score or fight, it was his sense of timing. He had a knack for delivering the big goal when the team needed it most, or winning the key fight that lit a fire under his teammates. During those early years, his biggest challenge was balancing his natural instinct to drop the gloves with his growing role as an elite goal scorer. Coach Terry O'Reilly, a former enforcer himself, constantly reminded Neely that his hands were now worth more scoring goals than throwing punches. Still, even as he shifted his focus towards scoring, Neely never lost his edge. He just got smarter about picking his spots, making him even more dangerous. His teammates saw it firsthand. He was always the first to stand up for them on the ice, but also the hardest worker in practice, setting an example that helped reshape the Bruins' culture. The 1989-90 season marked Neely's true rise to superstardom. He shattered his previous records, scoring 55 goals and adding 37 assists, while still playing the same bruising, hard-nosed style that made opponents fear him. He wasn't just scoring, He was dominating, delivering highlight reel goals and punishing hits in the same shift. Under new head coach Mike Milbury, Neely thrived. Milbury trusted him in key situations, giving him more ice time and a permanent role on the first power play unit. The extra minutes paid off, and the rest of the league started to notice that Neely had somehow gotten even faster and stronger. His quick release became lethal. Goalies simply couldn't handle it. His line mates Craig Janney and Bob Carpenter loved playing with him, knowing that if anyone took a run at them, Neely would make them pay for it. That protection gave them more space to create plays, and Boston's offense flourished. Then came the 1990-91 season where Neely took his game to another level. He was on pace for a monster year, scoring 51 goals in just 69 games. But it wasn't just about numbers. Something had clicked in his game. He was scoring from everywhere on the ice, no longer relying on his usual spots. In one dominant stretch, he racked up goal after goal, torching goalies with a blend of power and finesse that no one else in the league could match. The Boston Garden crowd responded, chanting, "Cam, Cam, Cam," every time he touched the puck. His teammates saw it too. He was so dominant in practice that Milbury would sometimes joke about putting him on both teams just to balance things out. Neely wasn't just a star anymore. He had become one of the most feared players in NHL history. He could change a game with a goal, a hit, or a fight, sometimes all in the same shift. But what made him even more special was his humility. He never let his success go to his head, always putting the team first. Instead of talking about his own achievements, he focused on big wins. His relentless work ethic set the tone for the entire locker room, pushing his teammates to match his intensity. As the face of the Bruins, Neely didn't just play with fire, he ignited it in everyone around him. The 1993-94 season showed just how unstoppable Cam Neely could be, even while battling injuries that would have ended most careers. After missing most of 2 seasons due to knee problems caused by Ulf Samuelsson's infamous hit in the 1991 playoffs, Neely returned with something to prove. He couldn't practice much because of his knee, often resting until game time, but when he stepped on the ice, he was a force of nature. In just 49 games, he scored an astonishing 50 goals, a feat only matched by legends like Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux at the time. Even more incredible, he actually reached 50 goals in just 44 games. But because it happened in the team's 66th game of the season, the NHL officially records it as 50 goals in 44 games. That technicality didn't matter. What mattered was that Neely was back, playing some of the best hockey of his career. His goal scoring reached another level. At one point, he torched opposing goalies with a ridiculous scoring streak, finding the net again and again, despite barely being able to walk after games. But it wasn't just his offensive brilliance that made this season legendary. Even while playing through constant pain, he still threw huge hits and played his trademark physical style. His toughness inspired the entire Bruins roster, and they rallied around him for a deep playoff run that few saw coming. What made Neely's performance even more incredible was what he endured just to play. Doctors later revealed that, in addition to his knee injuries, he was also battling a degenerative hip condition. Before every game, he underwent extensive treatment just to get his leg working. He was in pain constantly, but you'd never know it once the puck dropped. He played with the same fire and dominance that made him one of the most feared players in the game. This wasn't just a great season, it was one of the most awe-inspiring displays of willpower in sports history. His teammates from that year still talk about how he would limp into the locker room before games, barely able to move, only to transform into a wrecking force the moment he hit the ice. No excuses, no hesitation, just pure determination. That season cemented Neely's legacy, not just as a goal-scoring powerhouse, but as one of the toughest, most resilient players the NHL had ever seen. In just 726 games, Cam Neely left a mark on hockey that few players have ever matched. 395 goals, 299 assists, and countless moments that proved how one player could take over a game in every way possible. He did things NHL fans had rarely seen before, like scoring 50 goals in just 44 games while battling injuries, and delivering dominant playoff performances that made him one of the most feared players in the postseason. But Neely's impact wasn't just about numbers, it was about how he changed the game. After him, every team started looking for the next Cam Neely, a player who could score like a sniper and fight like an enforcer. Before Neely, you were either a goal scorer or a grinder, but he showed you could be both. Even today, when hockey fans talk about the perfect power forward, they're really talking about what Neely did in Boston. Despite having his career cut short by injuries at just 31, his legacy was undeniable. He was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2005, not just because of his stats, but because everyone knew they had witnessed something special. A player who could beat you with skill, strength, and most importantly, heart. Thanks for watching our story about hockey's most feared power forward. If you enjoyed learning about Cam Neely's legendary career, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share your favorite Neely moment in the comments below. Until next time, keep your stick on the ice.